Good morning, all. Wonderful to see your faces. So, in light of the events that transpired this week, and lots of events transpired this week, but the one that I am thinking of right now is the shooting in the church and the children. Words that should never go together in one sentence. And sometimes, I just think, what? Sometimes life just doesn't make sense. And so when I find myself in that place, sometimes I draw from sacred texts, ancient wisdom, sometimes indigenous cultures, stories from indigenous cultures to make sense of things. And I have a story that I want to share with you all today that is a Native American story, creation story. So it's a story, right? But I think when we look at these sometimes metaphorically, we can find some deep truths in that we in our modern era have forgotten to our peril. So this is a story of Grandmother Spider. If you just sit back, relax, get comfortable, this is story time. And if I could have the first slide, thank you. Long ago, the spider spun her web in the quiet corners of the world, which with each thread she wove, a connection between the elements of the earth, the air, the sky, and the water. Her web was a map, a symbol of interwoven relationships that all bind together. It was in her web that the past, the present, and the future all converge, and where the forces of nature intertwined in perfect balance. As a spider spins her web, she teaches the lessons of patience. Each thread is laid with care, one strand at a time, reminding us that great things are built slowly and with intention. Her legs stretching out in every direction represent the many paths that can be taken. No matter the journey, they all lead back to the center, the heart of the web, the core of existence. Her web is a network that connects us all from the smallest creature to the grandest spirits. Her intricate design mirrors the complexity of life, where every action, no matter how small, ripples out through the fabric of existence, creating effects that reach beyond our understanding. She reminds us that we are not isolated beings, but part of a larger whole, bound together by invisible threads. Whether we realize it or not, each choice we make affects the world around us. Just as a spider's, every move shapes her web. And her web is never finished. And neither is our journey. It is a continual process of growth, learning, and connecting. The spider teaches us that we may face challenges and obstacles, but it is our strength lies in the connections we create along the way. As you look at the spider's web, remember this: just as a spider spins her threads to create beauty and meaning, you too can weave. So too can we weave our own stories into the fabric of the world, connecting with others and creating something greater than ourselves. So there's a lot of lessons in this story, much wisdom here. First you have the harmony of nature. You've got that perfect balance on our planet and in the solar system. You have the many paths that reach out, all of them leading back to the center, to the divine core. You have this idea that every great thing is created through patience and time and intention. Of course, there's this idea that we are all connected, all bound in one whole, and everything affects everything else. And of course, this idea that our strength, our ability to create what it is we want to see, lies in the connections that we nurture. So many different stories, and I know that this is a traditional Native American story, but it is also reflected in other indigenous cultures, I know. And in particular, in the ancient Vedic stories, they have in Indra's net of jewels, Indra's net of jewels. And we'll go to the next slide. So Indra is a Hindu deity, and she weaves a similar web, but at the center of the web is a diamond, like a jewel, a diamond of light. And that all of the strands of the web also are jewels, like pearls on a string, and they all reflect the light at the center. And like a hologram, each of them reflect each other on every strand throughout eternity. That's Indra's net of jewels. And so this web of life metaphor is popular, I think, because it helps us, sort of begin to grasp the vast reaches of consciousness, of universal consciousness, of that primordial Om, if you will, that all things originate, and how everything is interconnected, and like this hologram, we all reflect the whole. Just, giving us a sense of how we can grasp that. Now, in unity, we say there is only one presence and one power active in the universe and in my life. That's a similar idea of this one universal consciousness that is everywhere present, that holds it all together, that everything is an expression of it. Therefore, we're all connected. And the other important lesson in this web story is that our lives could never be independent. They can never be isolated threads. We can never sort of exist by ourselves over here. Instead, we're all woven together in this great web of life. And what affects one strand affects another strand. And that every action, every intention, every thought that we have reverberates out into these strands, into this web, and touches more than we could ever possibly understand. And in the same way, others' actions and intentions and thoughts reverberate out and affect us for good and not so good, right? And sometimes it's the stories we tell about that give us the interpretation of how we experience it. So this can also be experienced in a just a practical, like a small, practical, physical way. You can experience this connection. So this water bottle, for example, my daughter gave this to me when she was working at Starbucks when she was in high school. She got a deal on it. She was making extra money, but not only that, it taught her discipline and responsibility. I mean, she would get up at 5 in the morning to get there to open the store before 6. I could never get her out of bed before 7:30 to get to school, and yet here she is, waking up this early to go and do this because she was learning responsibility. It was just like, she got that. So when I hold this, I am connected to her, and that time, remember past and present and future all kind of coincide in this moment, and I can remember the lessons and how she was growing. Another way we're connected is, well, I really can't read the bottom of where this is created, but we can say maybe China, like a lot of things are created in China, and that can be a blessing or a curse, It could be a blessing if someone needed to be employed and they had this job. Not so much if they were not treated well, right? So I can be connected with those people in this moment through this object. I can pause and I can send out a blessing to those people that I'm now connected to vibrate out a prayer of blessing through the web to touch those people. Now the water inside, right? The water comes from, I filled it up through the filtered tap that we have, and the water from our home. For most people who live in Chapel Hill, it comes from University Lake, which is a beautiful lake. We've actually kayaked on that lake before. And the water from the lake is the rain, right? The rain fills the lake. I'm also connected with the people who laid the original, underground infrastructure to bring that water to my home. And all of the people who are monitoring it now. So when I take a sip, I am connected to all of those in this moment. This water is also moistening my vocal cords so that I can continue to talk to you, and so that maybe you can be inspired to be mindful of the connections that you have in your life. And maybe that fills you with more peace, and maybe that peace radiates out into the web and touches more than you know. More than you know. So when we observe our connections, we are opening ourselves to experience something greater than ourselves. And every time we take a positive action or an act of compassion, or maybe we send a prayer to someone, or we think a loving thought, or we affirm our spiritual magnificence, we are plucking the string in the web that reverberates out to others who can also experience it. Think about that for a moment. Every prayer you have ever said, every time you said a blessing to someone, every time you've held someone in your heart, every time you have done an affirmation for yourself, that has created an energy, you see, an energy that reverberates out. Now, the reverse is also true. Every time we indulge in negative energy and, we're thinking judgmental, thoughts, fearful, maybe even hateful thoughts, that reverberates out into the web. So we are either strengthening the web with our actions, with our thoughts. We are either strengthening and creating the bonds of love and peace, or we're weakening it. We're contributing to the illusion of separation. So our actions have a powerful impact. We want to be mindful of them, right? We want to be mindful. And here's the thing, we like to think that we are separate beings living separate lives. I got my little separate life over here. You got your little separate life over there. You got your little separate life over there. You know, I felt that for a long time, most of my life. I felt like, you know, it's my separate life. And I have to say, I think as a result of that, I always felt a little bit of disconnection. You know, like not quite in there. But nothing lives in isolation. Nothing lives in isolation. And any time that we feel lonely, it's because we've forgotten how interconnected we are. We've simply forgotten our place on the web. And when we forget, fear grows. You know, when we forget our connection, when we feel separate, when we feel isolated, that generates a sense of fear, right? And it can also generate feelings of being a victim. Oh, it's those people out there, those other people, who are causing my problems, who are the source of my misery. It's all a dream. That's all a dream, right? It's time to wake up and remember that we are so intimately interconnected with everything and everyone in this glorious web of life. And when we do remember, fear dissipates. Feelings of isolation just dissolve. It just dissolves, and then we can experience that divine at our center more easily. We feel that peace in our heart more fully. We feel that connection with others more completely. We have that sense. So, you know, and this is not just, you know, a spiritual mental construct. It's actually a physical reality, too. Like, you could never accurately say, I'm going for a walk by myself in the forest. Well, are you really by yourself? Because the trees rely on your exhale, your carbon dioxide, in order to live, and you rely on the oxygen that they give you to live. You are literally in a dance of life with the trees that you're walking amongst. Can never be alone, right? We're always connected, and every person, every animal, every plant, every mineral is essential to the working of the whole system. Just like, you know, flowers rely on bees in order to propagate, and the bees rely on the flower in order to have nectar. We're all essential. Everything is essential to the whole. Every person is essential to the whole. And, you know, this community is kind of like a microcosm in this grand, you know, web of life. Every person is unique here, but vitally essential to the working of this whole unit successfully and harmoniously. It's sort of a microcosm. So, knowing this gives us power. Embracing this understanding puts us in a powerful position. Hey, when we know that our actions and our thoughts and our intentions reverberate out and create effect and touch so many things that we don't even know, that's powerful. That is powerful. What are you going to do with that power? Right? What are you going to do with that power? We also have the power to draw from the wisdom of the whole, from the love that is generated, from people, other people in the world that are praying, that are sending out that vibration of love and peace. We can draw that. We can open to that. And now I always want to say here too, because there's a lot of other negative stuff that's out there in the web, and people, there's the hate, and there's, all of that energy. So we want to create a boundary. And what I feel like I need to do sometimes when I'm feeling a little too sensitive to the vibration around me is I state my aura is closed to all but the divine vibration. And that sort of, I just visualize a boundary around my aura. Some people might think, well, that's a little woo-woo thing, but it works for me. So you try it if it works for you. I feel like you're creating kind of a boundary so that you don't let that in, but you can allow that divine energy, that love that's being sent there. We can allow that love in. And we can consciously choose to radiate that light at the center, that source, that divine source. We can consciously choose to radiate it and reflect it. We are reflections of it, and it is pure peace, love, joy, well-being, abundance, wisdom, all of that. That's what source is. And because we're made in that, we are a reflection of it. That's who we are. This is a good place to begin affirmative prayer work, right here. So our awareness of all of this helps us to live into more reverence for life, more gratitude for all beings. We begin to live more in harmony, maybe more sustainably, definitely more consciously. And we naturally want to have all of the other beads on all of these webs to experience as much love, as much joy, as much peace, as much well-being as we do, because it strengthens the web. And so we naturally are open-hearted, compassionate, willing to give of ourselves, share of our time, our talents, and our abundance with others, because we know that it reverberates out into the web, making it stronger, and comes back to us, reverberates back to us. Right? How is this settling with you? Kind of good? Okay. All right. So, would you like to say an affirmation with me that affirms this idea for you? And we'll move to the affirmation there. Can you guys see that? Okay. Take a nice deep breath. I am one with the infinite web of life. I choose loving, healing thoughts, knowing they radiate out along the web of life. I graciously receive the love and healing that's sent to me. And so it is. Namaste. Hi, it's Reverend Victoria here. I'm at Unity Center of Peace with our house band, Bright Matter.
Hello.
Yeah, and if this video has inspired you or empowered you or opened your heart, opened your consciousness, or even just given you hope, we ask that you support what we're doing here by making a donation today, going to unitychapelhill.org or clicking the link below. And we thank you.
Thank
Thank you.